7 things that many people fail to realize or just simply do not know when it comes to their 0% APR or interest rate with their credit cards. What up, you got Mr. Smith, point 0.5 of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and in this brief video I want to talk to you about those 0% intro rate cards and 7 things that a lot of people don't tend to know. But in this video, hopefully you get some insight or at least a bit of enlightenment as it relates to those cards, because they can be powerful tools to use as it relates to taking a strategic approach with your credit. Now, what are those cards that I'm referring to? Well, many cards offer, I say many, when you qualify or you pre-qualify for the ability to get into a card that allows you to start out with a 0% interest rate, it can be highly beneficial. Sometimes they may mail you certain offers in the mail, as we've got several times, saying you're pre-approved for 0% interest rate for this many months. You get these different rewards that can come along with it. And that's usually because they've done a soft pull to determine that you fit what it is that they're looking for. There are also times you can seek out and find 0% interest rate cards. So regardless of if you sought after the card or they sought after you, these rules apply. And I got my notes because I wanted to make sure I hit them in a certain order and didn't leave anything off, just so you can best benefit from the information at hand. That being said, number one, when it comes to those 0% interest rate, what you do have to understand, you still have a monthly minimum. Sometimes people think, well, you know, since it's a 0% interest rate, I don't have to pay monthly because I'm not being charged interest. I don't know where you get that from, but if it's a balance on there, then that means it's still something that has to be paid. So you still have some type of monthly minimum. Now, the lower the balance, the lower the monthly minimum, because they want you to, in their eyes, they want to give you a monthly minimum that's a portion of what you actually owe. So say the monthly amount or the balance is $1,000. They may say the monthly minimum is $78, because you just pay a little bit and you carry a balance, which that's what they like for you to do. But however, you don't have to do it that way. You still want to make sure you make note of all of the things that we teach as it relates to the 5 factors, but you do still have some type of monthly minimum as long as you have a balance. If you don't have a balance, of course, there's no minimum payment on a 0 balance, but if there's some balance, you still have a monthly minimum. Keep that in mind. Number 2, the intro APR may apply to transfers and or purchases. What do I mean? Sometimes the 0% interest rate can apply to just purchases, not balance transfers. Sometimes it can apply to both, meaning that even though you got the card and you don't currently have a balance on there, the purchases that you make qualify for the 0% interest for the terms that they, pretty much allotted. And I'll get into that shortly. However, sometimes you can also take a high interest card that you may have a balance with and transfer that amount over to this new card, and it also qualifies for that 0% interest rate. And that's a powerful concept if the math makes sense, because sometimes you may have a 20% interest rate with another credit card, but you transfer it over to a 0% interest rate, and it can possibly save you money when done correctly if the math makes sense, which is a perfect segue into number 3. The 0% can get canceled. And what do I mean by that? Basically, if you default on the payments or you're late or, you don't pay as agreed, they can cancel that 0%. So you got in it thinking that you were going to be in it for a certain amount of time. But if you didn't do your part, they can cancel it, which transitions into number 4. The transfer fees may not, and typically this isn't the case, but it may not always make sense. So this is what I really wanted to pick up on based on number 2. It may not always make sense. What I mean is you may be paying a high interest rate somewhere else to where the balance that you're carrying is costing you $180 a month. And we did a whole video on that because a lot of people don't factor in that monthly cost of having a credit card, which is the interest rate that's being charged on a month-to-month basis. But if you're paying $100 and some a month, just as an example, and sometimes much more, then the balance transfer fee, if you transfer over $10,000 or $9,000, the balance transfer fee might be $300, $400, $500. You have to determine if that makes sense, because if the transfer fee is $400 to $500, but you're paying almost $200 a month in order to just carry a balance, then it might make sense, because if you have an intro rate of 0%, for more than 4 months, which is 12 months, 16 months, sometimes 21 months, then guess what? It can definitely save you a ton of money in interest because you transferred it over with a 0% interest rate, even though you had to pay a balance transfer fee. Now, if your math doesn't add up to where it makes sense, then that's the time where it may not always be in your best interest to do that. So make sure you understand the numbers before you go into it, before you make that balance transfer. Otherwise, it can eat into more money than you expected. Number 5, 0% interest won't last forever. And I hit on this a couple of times just by normal dialogue in this video, but it won't last forever. Typically, it's a timeline. Typically, it may be 12 months, 18 months. I've seen 21 months, and it may vary. Sometimes it may be less, sometimes it may be more, but typically you're getting 12 months, 18 months, 21 months, some variation of that. Basically, knowing that in advance you have a certain amount of time that you had a 0% interest rate helps you, because now you can look at it like, okay, what all can I get accomplished within this 12-month time frame to where the money that I spend on this card, I'm not being charged interest on. And that helps you in your investment strategy. If you're using the money to flip it into more money, it helps as it relates to your debt payoff strategy. If you're using it to help you pay off a little bit of debt faster, it helps you when it comes to understanding what is yet to come. What type of how high will the interest rate be once that timeline expires? So understanding that the 0% interest doesn't last forever helps you in your game plan, but it also lets you know that helps you to not get caught off guard, because some people think that it's going to last forever. Then they carry a big balance and they look up and realize how much they were hit with interest wise once they allowed that balance or that 0% to expire. So keep that in mind. Number 6, some of these cards also offer rewards. Sometimes you may not think it has a reward just because it's 0% interest, but sometimes you can get a reward. Sometimes that may be a matter of you logging into the system or requesting or seeing what rewards exist. But rewards help because what it does is allow you to get some type of credit or perk or money back just from using the card that you were planning on using anyway. You still want to be strategic because you don't want to get caught by number 7, which is you still have to be aware of your credit utilization. So even though it may offer rewards, you still want to be mindful of your credit utilization, because many times you get into the 0% interest rate based on you having a decent credit score already. But at the same time, if you neglect the fact that you were approved for it and you just let your credit utilization get out of whack across the board, then that still can't hurt your score. So make sure you keep that credit utilization at the forefront of your understanding when it relates to these cards, because that credit utilization is 165 points available if you maintain it properly. So that could be you paying it off in full every single month, so you're not even worried about the interest rate because you're doing a good job at making sure your utilization is 0. Or that can be just keeping that utilization 10% or less. We recommend single digits, but definitely make sure you are well aware of the credit utilization and what you need to do to keep it low, because that's 165 points that you could be tapping into. That's all I got for this video. Mr. Smith, signing out.